When I was first starting as an investor, I was interested in how I could potentially structure a partnership for rental properties. Because at the time, I was earlier in my corporate career, I was making a great paycheck and all that. But like, you know, when you're buying properties that you're not improving, which is what I do, I like turnkey rental properties because I don't want to put any work into anything. You're basically paying market value. So you have to put your down payment down and then get the mortgage. Well, let's say that you're buying a $100,000 house, it's a 20% down payment. Well, that means if you want 10 houses, you need 10 sets of $20,000 to get 10 loans, right? So my question in my head was, well, I don't have 10 sets of, actually, when I was buying, it was sets of $10,000 because properties were a lot cheaper, but I don't have that many down payments to keep funding this. So at the time, I had a friend who was making a lot of money doing some overseas work, and he was already doing his own investing. And I talked to him about investing. I was like, you know, I feel really good about these properties, but like I only have so many sets of 20% down. And he said, you know, if you want to pursue it, I'd be interested in maybe partnering with you. Maybe we can make something work. And I was like, okay, so what would that structure look like? And I had started kind of learning some potentials for like commercial partnership structuring, but I wasn't sure how this might apply to just like a basic residential rental property. So here's what I came up with. Here's the structure I ended up doing, and here's my pros and cons about it. We became 50-50 partners. So he brought the cash. I took the loan in my name and basically took on that risk, and I did all the work. So his contribution was the money. My contribution was the loan and the work. So we decided that was a 50-50 split. So the benefit to both of us is I didn't need all those sets of the money down for the down payments, and he got to save because you can only get so many mortgages. So this actually was a way for him to invest without using up his own mortgage slots. So there was a major benefit to both of us. So we came together, and the agreement was, like I said, he brought the money for the down payment and the closing costs. I took the loan in my name because at the time I qualified and did all the work, and I continued to be basically the manager of this investment partnership type of thing. And we split everything 50-50. Income, expenses, if we ever sell the properties, we're going to split that 50-50, positive or negative. Everything is 50-50 down the line. And on the legal side of this, anytime you're partnering, make sure you're protected legally. We did not do an LLC because it goobers things up for financing. It can cause a lot of challenges, but we did do a legal partnership agreement. So it defines all of our roles, who has what rights to the property, blah, blah, blah. So make sure anytime you're considering partnering, you do that. But that's what I came up with for a rental property split. Now, I did this when properties were a lot cheaper and the cash flow on them was a lot higher. So things you want to think about is, number one, what are the margins? Like if you're buying a, say, turnkey rental property right now, I just say that because that's what I work with, and you're only making $100 to $200 a month in cash flow, is that going to make sense if you're both coming home with $50 a month? Maybe, maybe not. It kind of depends on everyone's goals. You know, what's your reason for partnering? So you really want to run the numbers. It made total sense when I did it because the cash flow margins were huge. So it's just an easy split. We both make a lot of money. So this was 9 years ago we started doing this. So I'm now 9 years into these partnerships. So we've been splitting everything 50-50, like I said. And so the major benefit for it to me was essentially I'm making infinite returns on these properties because I was no money in. So I'm contributing things, but because I was no money in, literally that becomes infinite returns. Huge perk. Another perk is I was able to buy a lot more properties at the time than I would have had I been reliant on my own funds for the whole thing. So the cons though, here's a couple reflections that looking back, I will say that I wish I had done it differently. I wish I had actually set it up as a loan. So instead of bringing him in as an equity partner, I would have borrowed the money, almost kind of making him like a private lender, right? And then pay him interest, like say 7% interest or whatever it was, to eventually pay that back. And there's two reasons. Yeah. Two major, I think I'm forgetting one. Two major reasons that I would be interested in having had done this. Number one, this is totally selfish. Those properties that I partnered with him, because of where and when we bought them, have all like literally tripled and quadrupled in value. Now I have to split all of that equity. I'm like, oh man, that could have all been mine. So selfish on my part, but hey, there's a lot of profit to be had, and now I have to split it down the middle. But that's my selfish reason. Then my my actually quite the opposite of a selfish reason. And this may be me personally, you may not have this issue, it may not be bothersome to you, but one thing that has really stressed me out over the years about this partnership is if something goes wrong with the property, he's a seasoned enough investor to know that things happen, like tenant turnovers happen, vacancies happen, evictions happen, it just happens. But I have such a conscience. I never want to disappoint my investor. Like I could never sleep at night if I screwed him over in any way. And if something happens to the property, it's not even my fault, but I feel bad. It's like, oh man, like I want to perform for my investor. I want him to be really stoked and happy. And again, I can tell myself all day long, these are completely normal things. The returns are still there, but it still hits me in the subconscious. Like if something happens to one of my properties and it's just me on it, cool. I have no one else to worry about in the equation. But having a partner on these properties, I don't want to say it stresses me out because I don't lose sleep over it necessarily, but like I think about it a lot. And I would like to not think about those kinds of things. So I'm just one of those people that I get really kind of antsy if someone's not happy, or they trust me enough to partner with me and then something happens with the property or whatever. So that's something to think about for yourself, is how stressed might you be if you're running the property and something like this happens. So those are my two reasons why I wish I had thought to structure it like a loan. And maybe he wouldn't have agreed to that, I don't know. But one other thing for you to think about, this wasn't so much an issue with me, is who you partner with. You may think today that partnering with this one particular person is such a fantastic deal if it's like a family or a friend. Don't ever let partnerships get in the way of your relationships, because they can. Anytime money comes into the equation, it's possible. Don't pick up some random Joe Blow off the street and ask him to partner. You really, really, really want to know who you're partnering with, and maybe even have a discussion with that person ahead of time to say like, hey, what do we do if we get in conflict down the road? Like, how do we want to, let's figure out how we want to handle that now before we're both in it. So that's just kind of a word to the wise. Last word to the wise, make sure you check with professionals, your accountant, legal team, whatever. Make sure you're properly structured for this. But to summarize, in case it helps any of you guys, at least even get your creative juices going. So my partnership it's a 50-50 split based on a cash contribution equating to 50% of the ownership, and a loan and work constituting the other 50%. So that was my contribution. The cash was his contribution. Everything is split down the line, 50-50, positive or negative, and we have a legal partnership structure agreement in place to support it. So you could tweak that in commercial. Some things people do is like, say, take 30% off the top of the gross or the net or the gross or whatever, and then to the person who's doing the work or the managing partner, and then split the rest 50-50. There's all sorts of combos with this, and I had actually started looking into those, but when I took 30% off the top, there was not a lot of cash flow left to split. So you want to make it applicable to whatever it is you're doing, but hopefully that gets your creative juices going. Again, always protect yourself, protect your partner, be very smart about doing it. Don't just jump in and be like, yeah, this will be fun. And really consider potential consequences or repercussions. And also consider if you need to partner. I talk to a lot of people. They're all excited about partnering, and I ask them, like, do you need to partner? Like, do you need the capital? And they're like, no, but I think it'll be really cool. And I'm like, personally, I think if you don't have to partner, make sure there's a really specific reason why you're partnering. If it's for, major strategic growth and you have a plan in place, cool. That's a big part of real estate. But if it's just because you think it's a cool idea, but you could actually kind of buy the property by yourself, really, really put some thought into that. But again, hopefully this helps get your creative juices going, figure something out, and cheers to creative financing for real estate.